have you ever wondered why some ideas catch on and others falter? You know, it's a really good question. Or have you ever truly tried to figure out how do you create a buzz? Or how do you generate more word of mouth? Well, I'm happy to tell you that Jonah Berger is here today to tell us exactly how to do that. Jonah is a marketing professor at the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School and has spent the last decade studying how social influence works. And on your table, you have a copy of his New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestseller, Contagious, Why Things Catch On. And Jonah's going to give us some ideas today that we can use to take the walking movement forward. So, Jonah?
How can we build a social movement around walking? How can we make walking contagious? I've spent the last decade studying how social influence and word of mouth work, and I want to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes with you guys thinking about and beginning to think about how we can apply this to the walking movement. And to do that, I want to start with a very simple example. So this is a picture of a bike. It's actually my bike in my office at the Wharton School. And I bike to work almost every day. I live about 2.5 miles away from work. It's a little too far to walk. I do walk sometimes, but biking is a little easier. And what's interesting about that is I keep it in my office. Why? Well, because it's safer and it's easier, and then I just know where it is and I can leave whenever I want. Actually, I'm not the only person at the Wharton School who bikes to work. A number of other people bike to work also, and a number of other people keep their bike in their office. And interestingly enough, actually, about 6 months ago, one of my colleagues started biking to work. He had come into each of our offices and talked to us every once in a while, and when he comes into our office, he sees our bikes. And that reminds him that lots of other people are biking, and eventually it got him to go decide to bike himself. Now, he bikes much further away from work. He lives probably about 6-7 miles away. But one interesting question we could ask ourselves, if what instead of putting the bikes in our offices, people had put their bikes locked downstairs, would it have been as easy for our colleagues to see us biking, that we biked? Would it have been as likely that it came up in conversation? And would have been as likely that our other colleagues started biking as well? And so one question I want to ask this morning is how can simple things, like in this case putting bikes in our offices rather than downstairs, or making behavior what I'll call more public, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes, can we help ideas catch on? Because lots of people want to walk and want to be healthier, but thinking about what others are doing is a big driver of what we do. And if we don't see other people doing something, it's going to be really hard for us to do it ourselves. So I want to get us thinking with a little bit of a question this morning. Here are 3 products or brands that everyone is probably quite familiar with. We have Disney World, the self-described place where dreams come true, Honey Nut Cheerios, the delicious breakfast cereal, and Scrubbing Bubbles, which is a product some of us may be too familiar with. It's a bathroom cleaner. If you had to guess, which of these 3 products do you think gets the most word of mouth? Is it Disney, is it Cheerios, or is it Scrubbing Bubbles? I'm going to ask everybody to vote. So I heard a bunch of Disneys. How many people for Disney? It's a little hard to see here with the lights. OK, it looks like about half the room. Somebody else want a different guess? I heard Scrubbing Bubbles, I think. How many for Scrubbing Bubbles? OK, maybe about 30%. And how many for Cheerios? Thank you with the lights. I appreciate that. Good. About 25, 30% also. OK, thank you. Appreciate the lights. So I think that question points out 2 things. First of all, and I could only see the people in the front row, but when I asked that question, a number of you looked scared. Like you had no idea how to begin to think about that question. What do you mean which of these gets more word of mouth than others? How would I begin to answer that question? And actually, this specific question doesn't matter for you guys at all. You don't care whether Disney World gets more word of mouth than Cheerios or Scrubbing Bubbles. But what you care a lot about is the why. If you don't understand why something gets talked about more than something else, it's going to be really hard to get people to talk about the thing you want them to talk about walking.